I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to the story. We're getting closer to September 1st when user amounts of drugs will once again be illegal in Oregon. The end of Measure 110, the experiment which legalized drugs. Now, as part of the change, counties in the metro area are setting up something called deflection programs. They're an attempt to get drug users help and to keep them out of the jail system. An update on Multnomah County's plan and how things will look in Washington County. Those are our big stories tonight. Multnomah County's deflection plan got a big shakeup today, and we're going to hear from the county chair, Jessica Vega-Peterson, in just a few minutes. But we thought it would be useful for you at home and, maybe in Multnomah County as well, to learn how Washington County is going to handle deflection. Our guide will be the District Attorney Kevin Barton.
Maybe the starting point is that we've been meeting as a county since before the governor signed the new law. And I want to just emphasize that we've really leaned into this in a really significant way. I can't tell you the number of hours I've spent, hundreds of hours on this, because it's an important issue that we want to get right. It's also something brand new for Oregon.
So that's Kevin Barton. He says his county's deflection will sound similar to folks who have heard of diversion programs in the court system.
And for people to understand what deflection means, the best way of describing it is, I think people are generally familiar with a diversion program, like drunk driving diversion, something where we try and take someone out of the normal process and divert them toward treatment instead, and we give them a reward, which is the case might be dismissed or the charge might be decreased if they successfully complete that. Deflection is essentially the same idea, except it happens far earlier in the process. So before the court process starts, maybe even before the police officer brings someone to jail, out there on the street, the officer would present an opportunity for someone to divert or to deflect their case outside of the normal process.
Okay, so that's the plan. Keep a drug user's case out of the court system completely and help them get help to get off those drugs. Barton says Washington County is using approaches that have worked in other Oregon counties, along with techniques and programs that Washington County has used as well.
And proven approaches that have worked across the nation, drawing from things like specialty courts and treatment courts, or there's a program called Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion that originated out of Seattle and that Salem, Marion County, has done successfully. So we've taken bits and pieces from other programs that we know are evidence-based and have a high likelihood of success, and we've put them all into our Washington County deflection program. And starting on September 1st, that's when it will all begin.
Okay, so that's great high-level stuff. Now let's get specific. How will this work on the streets of Hillsborough or Beaverton?
Yeah, so scenario where, let's say, a Beaverton police officer is walking down the street and they see someone using fentanyl outside the Beaverton Public Library, which is a relatively common occurrence. That officer would have a reason to interact with that person, and if that officer develops probable cause that in fact is someone who's possessing or using fentanyl, that would be a crime called possession of a controlled substance. That's the new crime the legislature created. So that officer would have options available to him or her, and one of those options would be to issue a criminal citation. And that's different than what we currently have under ballot measure 110, but a criminal citation that commands that person to show up in court and to answer for a criminal charge of a possession of a controlled substance. Under our deflection program, for that Beaverton scenario, what that officer would also do would be to make a phone call to someone called a peer navigator or a peer support specialist. This would be a person who works for a community-based treatment organization, a place like LifeWorks Northwest or the Mental Health and Addiction Association of Oregon. And that would be someone who has lived experience. So they've been in that scenario, they know what it's like, and they can come out to the scene. And hopefully in the next 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes, that person actually arrives where the officer is there with that person. And the officer can do what we call a warm handoff. He can say to that person, look, you've been cited for this crime, but I want you to talk to Sally. Sally's been where you are. She can talk with you about some of your options, and we want to get you involved in treatment. And Sally would then take it from there. And the goal is that Sally would convince this person, hey, let's put you into this deflection program where if you successfully engage in treatment, and that's a key. In Washington County, we require everyone to successfully and meaningfully engage in treatment. But if you do, you can avoid criminal charges, you can avoid the prospect of jail time or a criminal record or things like that, and you can move forward with your life. And while we're at it, we can address any other issues you might be dealing with. Maybe there's housing instability, food insecurity. Maybe we can connect them up to other social welfare, things that might benefit them. But the goal is to leave them in a better position, to meet people where they are, but not leave them there, and help move them forward.
So there you go. The deflection program that the drug user will enter into, by the way, is going to last for 6 months. And Barton says people can only choose that route once a year. Also, there will not be a single place that people are dropped off, but the county is building 2 different locations that will be available in the near future.
There will be one central point, a hub that we rely on, and it's called our Center for Addiction Triage and Treatment, or CAT, C-A-T-T for short. That building was actually conceived in 2019. That idea was developed in 2019 before we had a fentanyl crisis and before ballot measure 110 was even passed by the voters. And that has been in process, and we just had a groundbreaking for it actually a month or 2 ago. So the timing of it is within the next year, we hope that new building and that new center will be ready to go. And it will be a 24/7 sobering and treatment center that will provide all sorts of resources for people that are involved in deflection. On day 1 of our deflection program, that building's not ready yet. So it's not quite ready yet, but there will be a center, and that will be a huge focus for us to center our resources around people and give them a place to go.
Okay, so there you go. That's how Washington County is going to handle drug deflection. What do you think about their plan? Let us know, will you? Send us an email. The address is thestory@kgw.com, or call and leave a voicemail. The phone number is 503-226-5090. It doesn't matter if you're watching live or later, we want to hear from you. All right, now to Multnomah County and their version of deflection. The opening of the controversial deflection center has now been pushed back. Instead of opening September 1st, now it's going to open mid to late October. It's a last-minute decision that the county chair has called disappointing, but the right thing to do. Here's Blair Best.
Deflection in Multnomah County is a work in progress. So much so, County Chair Jessica Vega Peterson delayed opening the deflection center off Southeast Sandy Boulevard, a place for people who choose drug treatment over jail.
Delaying the opening of a new pathway to treatment and recovery is disappointing. At the same time, based on recent discussions and tough choices, this is the prudent decision.
This comes less than 2 weeks before it was scheduled to open on September 1st, the day possession of hard drugs becomes a crime again in Oregon, a deadline the chair admits was ambitious.
We want to get this right.
Instead, street outreach efforts will start in September, with the center opening sometime in October, allowing more time to train nursing staff and meet with concerned community members.
I think it's the right decision, but it's a small step.
David Watnick is the attorney representing a preschool 450 feet from the deflection center. Earlier this month, the school threatened to sue the county if they opened in September, mainly over safety concerns.
We could end up back in the same spot in October if they're intending to move forward without a real plan.
As far as the neighborhood association itself is concerned, we just want to see a thorough plan with safety measures in place prior to opening this center.
Because safety is a major issue for the Buckman neighborhood. Take it from Eduardo.
Yeah, this area used to be pretty bad, like around here.
He runs a food truck a block away from the deflection center.
I think I just see a lot of people that have a drug problem.
Like Andrew.
Methamphetamine and fentanyl addict.
He spends all day getting more.
I personally really want to stop using so bad, but I can't. And I wish I had help.
Help, he hopes, will come from deflection.
Every person living with substance use disorder should have the opportunity to seek treatment, especially when they are in crisis.
Regardless of the situation, as long as people are being helped, it's better for the community.
Now, as we continue to talk of deflection and get wrapped up in the ins and outs of the county and the community, it is important to remember people like Andrew, because at the end of the day, helping people like him is the whole reason for all of this. Pat.
All right, thanks, Blair. Now let's go back to the county chair for just a moment. Her main points for delaying the opening were staff training and more time to address community concerns. So, does this mean the community's safety concerns are going to be met?
So as it stands right now, there will be 2 security officers at the site 24/7 and county security vehicles patrolling just the surrounding block. If they see criminal activity, they will not intervene but call 911. And there will not be a signed good neighbor agreement ready by the time the center opens. The county chair added today that there will simply be a framework for one, and I got to tell you, that's not sitting right with the community.
Continuing to work with the community on a good neighbor agreement is going to be a critical piece of this. And, we are working with them to make sure that they understand the services and the protocols we have in place around security, around transportation, around how we are going to actually be a good neighbor as part of this process.
Do you think a framework for an agreement is enough?
I think it is enough that we have right now. But
so far, the county has characterized the Good Neighborhood Agreement framework by September 1st as something that was mutually agreed upon between the county and the Buckman Neighborhood Association, as well as the CEIC. And fact of the matter is, we didn't know anything about this framework proposal.
Oh boy, so still some communication challenges there, still some work that needs to be done. How about the preschool? Will they still sue the county if they open without a larger safety plan?
So I asked the attorney for the school that today, and he couldn't say for certain, but added that they are looking in to see if the county violated Oregon public meeting laws by making decisions about this deflection center behind closed doors. I also asked the county chair today if this potential litigation played a role in her decision to delay, and here's what she said, and it was the most straightforward answer she gave all day, I'll add.
Did the potential lawsuit from the school play a role in your decision to delay?
No.
I think people can draw their own conclusions. I'm sure the threat of litigation is something that was part of their calculus. I would think equally powerful would be the overwhelming outcry from voters and residents.
All right, Blair, so what happens next?
So tomorrow morning, county commissioners will meet to talk more about deflection, and still on the table is a resolution to delay this thing even further by 3 months, and they'll vote on that in the coming days. Pat?
All right, thanks, Blair. We'll be watching. In the meantime, next on The Story, transportation funding will be a huge issue in Salem next year, and many believe not everyone is paying their fair share. We're verifying a claim made at a recent ODOT roadshow about how much damage buses do to the roads compared to regular good old cars. Plus, our Environment Northwest team takes you to Washington State, where some cherry farmers are struggling to turn a profit, the challenges they're facing, and the weather these farmers wish for when The Story returns. This month, state lawmakers on the Joint Transportation Committee continue their 12-stop tour around the state of Oregon, hearing what voters and taxpayers have to say about roads and transportation issues. At least that's how the tour is being advertised. The bigger picture is they want to make sure that voters know that Oregon's Department of Transportation is hundreds of millions of dollars in the hole, and, a drum roll please, to ask them how they'd like to pay to fill that hole. Now, during one of those tour stops here in the metro area, we heard a claim during a public comment portion of the meeting that did raise our eyebrows. Check it out.
One 2-axle TriMet bus does as much damage to the roads as 1,200 cars. Add the weight of batteries, and electric buses will do even more damage.
Okay, what? One bus doing as much damage as 1,200 cars? Seriously? We wanted to verify if that's actually accurate. Our sources are the EPA, the Department of Transportation, the Department of Energy, TriMet, the Portland Bureau of Transportation, and the Pavement Interactive Project. And it turns out, yep, it is absolutely accurate. You can say that. Now, it depends on things like road conditions and how many people are on the bus, so the ratio may not be exactly 1,200 to 1, but it is in the ballpark for sure. Now, if anything, it could be an understatement. When we asked for an estimate, the Portland Bureau of Transportation, a spokesperson there, told us a fully loaded bus can cause as much pavement damage as 10,000 personal cars. Okay, but why? Let's dig into this. We're going to start with math. The average unloaded weight of a new vehicle sold in the United States is about 4,300 pounds. And the unloaded weight of a 40-foot diesel bus is about 28,600 pounds. That means a bus only weighs about 7 times more than an average car. Other comparisons have similar ratios. A bus has about 8 times as many seats as a sedan, and it burns about 6 times more fuel to go the same distance. Based on that, you might assume a bus does about 7 times as much pavement damage. I have to admit, that's kind of what we thought here, but turns out when it comes to road damage, the formula is completely different. Check this out. Now we're getting into the advanced math. The rule of thumb often cited online is the 4th power law. Now that says that as the weight of a vehicle increases, the corresponding increase in road damage is equal to the increase in the vehicle's weight per axle to the power of 4. So if a vehicle's weight doubles, it's not 2 times the damage, it's 2 times the damage to the power of 4, as in 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So 16 times the damage. Did you follow me there? You're clearly not an English major like I am. 3 times the weight, well, that's 81 times the damage. 4 times the weight, that's 256 times the damage, and so on. Now, the 4th power law isn't really a law. It's more of a shortcut for making rough estimates. The real formula was developed by the U.S. highway officials and is way more complicated, so we're not even going to get into that. But it is accurate enough to show that, yes, a single bus probably does do at least as much damage as 1,200 cars. Kind of something to think about next time you hear someone saying we should have less cars and more buses. And yes, I know my environmental friends, that just hit every hot button you have, and you might be shouting at your screen, we're ignoring the impact of air pollution and greenhouse gases. Yeah, okay, I hear you. But it does kind of make you think, doesn't it? Cherry harvest season turned out better for Washington State than last year when disaster was declared. But that doesn't mean it was easy for family farmers to turn a profit. Erica Zucco with our Environment Northwest team digs into the challenges that cherry growers are now facing.
To keep acres of cherry orchards like Kevin Knight's, you've got to be working for love, not money.
It's been a long time since I've done very well on cherries. I don't know why I'm still doing it.
His dad grew first. Kevin picked his first cherry at age 5, and the work picked him.
I'm an engineer by education, but I like being outside. I'm outside all the time. It's a great job.
They've had trees here since the 1940s, and since then it has remained a family-owned business, one that Kevin hopes to pass on to his kids. And after several years that dumped on challenges for Washington growers, he may finally make some money again. It comes after several sour years that show why this business is so tough. First, there's weather.
Rain can split them. You have 24 hours of heavy rain, it could end you.
Heat can scorch them. In 2021, the heat dome hampered harvests for a lot of farmers. Light frost can kill them. In 2022, a spring cold snap meant only 13 million boxes of Washington cherries. And in 2023, 35% went to waste after cold weather caused California cherries to line up with Washington's, causing losses of more than 50%.
They call it a pipeline, to get out to the stores, and it was plugged. So, yeah, we didn't make any money last year.
So what is a great weather year for cherries?
Cherries are really sensitive to the rain. Early season, they're sensitive to frost. They can get too hot. We're farmers, nothing's ever perfect.
More unpredictable weather could mean more challenges for farmers, but Knight says every year is already a toss-up. He puts focus on the business side of things.
Everything costs more.
His biggest cost is pay for the workers who brave heat and early mornings to fill these buckets. Supply chain and inflation drove up costs of fuel and treatment chemicals. Plus, prices at grocers are dependent on marketing, mergers, and other factors he has no control over. There are also a lot of regulations that come without help to cover costs.
We do a lot of new rules and requirements to make sure that everyone is taking care of their workforce and taking care of the environment and the way they produce, but we're often competing directly against producers in other states and countries that have really different rules, and we can't price our own producers so uncompetitively that we lose market share to those who are maybe not producing in the same responsible way that we are here.
Growers hope policymakers take note, and as researchers look to the future, farmers will focus on making do with what the skies bring now.
It'd been better if it hadn't been 100 for a couple weeks, but
for Environment Northwest,
such is life.
I'm Erica Zucco.
All right, thank you, Erica. Coming up next on The Story, we're sticking with the cherry theme and digging for old. We'll take you back to the 1850s and the traveling nursery on the Oregon Trail that ended up around present-day Milwaukee. That's coming up next when The Story returns. Well, it's Monday morning, or it's Monday afternoon, evening by now, I guess. Sure is. And we're digging for old with help from the Oregon Historical Society. Before the break, we told you about the cherry harvest in Washington State, and that put us on a cherry hunt in the archives. Searching their database, Cherry brings us 30 results, most of them simply describing the type of wood used to make something. But this entry really caught our eye. Described simply as a fragment of wood, the printed inscription comes from 1927, but carries with it a fascinating story of the blackheart cherry wood it's glued to. The tree from which this was taken was one of 800 fruit trees of different varieties, including apples, pears, peaches, crab apples, etc., brought across the plains to Oregon in 1847 by Henderson Llewellyn, aided by his son Alfred from Henry County, Iowa. A foot of earth mixed with pulverized charcoal was placed in each box, and in this, 2-year-old trees were planted. The trip beginning in April ended in November, and the fruit stock was set out a little later, a half-mile north of the present city of Milwaukee, Oregon, near the present lodge of the Waverly Golf Club. These were the first grafted trees, fruit trees, west of the Rocky Mountains. This was known as the traveling nursery and was the beginning of the fruit industry in the Pacific Coast. How about that? Here are photos from the early 1900s showcasing cherry trees in our region. The note goes on to say that Mr. Llewellyn sold one of the cherry trees for $5 in 1850, and it was planted near Olympia. It provided fruit for decades, and the last time cherries were plucked from its limbs was in July of 1926. Its wood was used to make the plank the message was eventually glued to and then subsequently donated to the Historical Society. Interesting stuff, huh? Hey, that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. But remember the story, our collective story? Well, that never ends. NBC's coverage of the Democratic National Convention's coming your way next. That continues through Thursday this week, and because of that, we're not going to have a show for you Wednesday or Thursday. You should be watching that other stuff. But we'll be right back here tomorrow night at 6:30. I'll see you then.